welcome back to our channel. The tension at Fairmont Crest was a living thing, thick, electric, and impossible to contain. When Leslie delivered her ultimatum, the entire house seemed to shudder under the weight of her words. Kat stood motionless, her breath caught between defiance and despair, while Leslie's icy tone echoed like a verdict passed down from a higher court. She wanted Kat to walk away, to leave Eva and Tomas alone, and she made it clear that if Kat disobeyed, everything she had built would burn. The warning was not an empty threat. Leslie had the power to destroy her, not with violence, but with truth. Kat's pulse throbbed in her temples as she tried to process what had just happened. Every fiber of her body screamed to fight, yet something inside her trembled, a quiet, rational fear that Leslie was capable of far worse than she let on. The woman had influence, control, and a cruelty disguised as calm. There was something almost surgical about the way Leslie dismantled people's lives, one confession at a time. Kat knew this because she had watched her do it before, to rivals, to family members, even to lovers who had thought they were immune. Now it was her turn to be dissected. She stumbled into the empty corridor, her reflection flickering in the mirror on the wall. She could barely recognize herself. The woman staring back was pale, hollow-eyed, and shaking. She had fought too hard to climb this high in Fairmont Crest's hierarchy, had sacrificed too much to let it all slip away because of one forbidden connection. Tomas was more than a man to her, he was proof that she could still feel something genuine amid the deceit. Eva, with her quiet charm and devastating innocence, was a reminder of everything Kat could never be again. And now Leslie had drawn a line in the sand, forcing Kat to choose between the illusion of love and the survival of her name. As night fell, the mansion seemed to come alive with whispers. The staff moved silently, pretending not to notice the tension that seeped into every corridor. Somewhere, in the West Wing, Leslie was still awake, composing messages, making calls, setting plans in motion. Kat could almost feel it, that calculated precision, the way Leslie could turn a rumor into a weapon. The woman's strength lay not in confrontation, but in the shadows. She planted doubts, twisted loyalties, and let people destroy themselves. Kat knew that once Leslie set her sights on someone, it was only a matter of time before they fell. The fear that settled inside Kat wasn't just about losing Tomas. It was the dread of exposure. She knew Leslie had access to everything, financial records, private messages, photos from nights she thought no one had seen. The kind of evidence that didn't just end a career, it buried reputations. Kat felt the walls closing in as she realized how deeply trapped she was. Every move she made, every secret she thought she'd hidden, was already under Leslie's control. And if Leslie wanted her gone, she wouldn't need to lift a finger, just whisper the right words in the right ears. Kat's mind spun through possible solutions, none of them clean. If she defied Leslie, she could lose everything. But if she surrendered, she would be left hollow, stripped of purpose. She thought of Tomas, how he had once looked at her with a kind of fierce tenderness, how she had believed, foolishly, that love could protect them both. But even Tomas had begun to drift away, pulled back toward Eva's light. It was a slow death, watching him slip through her fingers, one heartbeat at a time. Meanwhile, Leslie was not as composed as she appeared. Behind closed doors, she too was unraveling, though in a quieter, deadlier way. Her control over Kat was not born of hatred, it was born of fear. She had seen what Kat could do when desperate. She had seen the lengths Kat would go to for survival. If Kat decided to fight back, she could expose things that would destroy Leslie as well, old deals, falsified documents, private accounts tied to the family trust. Leslie's ultimatum was as much a preemptive strike as it was a warning. She couldn't allow Kat to destabilize the fragile balance of Fairmont Crest. Not now, not when so many other secrets were already trembling on the edge of exposure. But power breeds paranoia. Leslie began to question whether she had pushed too hard. If Kat broke, she could take everyone down with her. And that fear began to fester, twisting into anger. Leslie had spent her life keeping the Dupree legacy intact, cleaning up everyone else's messes. And yet, no one ever thanked her, they only feared her. Watching Kat, she saw a reflection of her younger self, ambitious, manipulative, desperate for control. Perhaps that was why she hated Kat so much, because Kat reminded her of who she had once been before she became the enforcer of the family's silence. As the hours dragged on, Kat retreated into her room, her thoughts spiraling toward a dark clarity. There was no winning this the honorable way. Leslie wanted obedience, but Kat had survived long enough to know that surrender never saved anyone at Fairmont Crest. If Leslie wanted to play God, Kat would learn how to play the devil. She began gathering information, bank statements, copies of contracts, whispered confessions from servants too frightened to speak aloud. She knew she could not attack Leslie head-on, she would need to dismantle her carefully, quietly, until the woman's foundation crumbled beneath her own perfection. Yet, even as she plotted, a part of Kat longed for something impossible, to be forgiven, to be seen without judgment. That weakness frightened her more than Leslie's threats. It was what made her human, and humanity was a liability in a place like this. She poured herself a glass of wine, hands trembling, watching the crimson liquid swirl like blood in the dim light. It was not courage that filled her veins now, it was desperation disguised as resolve. By dawn, the storm had quieted outside, but inside Fairmont Crest, a new one had begun. Leslie awoke to find a note slipped under her door, no signature, just a single sentence written in elegant handwriting: "You can destroy me, but I can take you with me." The message sent a chill through her, not because of the threat, but because she knew it was true. She looked out over the estate as the first light of morning broke through the mist, realizing that she had set into motion something she could no longer control. In another part of the mansion, Kat sat before the mirror, her reflection no longer shaking. Fear had turned to focus. The ultimatum had become her catalyst. She knew Leslie would strike again, that this was only the beginning. But for the first time, Kat wasn't afraid of losing everything. The moment Leslie had drawn that line, Kat had stopped being the hunted and begun to understand the power of becoming the predator. And as the sun rose over Fairmont Crest, its light fell across two women on opposite sides of the same battlefield, both terrified, both unyielding, and both unaware that the path they were on would not end in victory, but in mutual ruin. The house stood silent, immaculate as ever, but beneath its marble floors, the cracks were spreading, one heartbeat at a time. The morning light crept across Fairmont Crest like a silent verdict, its soft glow unable to warm the chill that had settled inside its walls. Leslie stood by the window of her study, her reflection fractured across the glass, the faint note from Kat still clutched in her trembling hand. The words were few but heavy, an omen rather than a warning. Outside, the estate was calm, the gardens glistening with dew, yet she felt the storm still moving beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to strike again. She had spent years mastering the art of control, bending chaos into order, molding people like clay to fit her design. But Kat was not clay. Kat was fire, unpredictable, consuming, and now untethered. Across the mansion, Kat sat motionless, the air thick with the scent of fading perfume and last night's exhaustion. The ultimatum still echoed in her mind, but its power had shifted. Fear had transformed into something sharper, determination born from ruin. Leslie had tried to cage her, but in doing so had taught her the anatomy of power, the rhythm of manipulation, the cruelty of survival. There was no going back now. She could no longer be the woman who waited for mercy. The note she had left under Leslie's door was not a threat, it was a declaration of war. Both women knew that peace was no longer possible. Fairmont Crest, with all its luxury and grace, had become a ticking clock counting down to collapse. Every secret hidden in its marble halls was now a weapon, every glance a negotiation. Leslie tightened her grip on the note until her knuckles whitened, understanding that she had created her own rival, a reflection of herself stripped of hesitation. And somewhere deep inside, she almost admired Kat for it. As the sun rose higher, its light spilled through the mansion's great windows, falling on two women bound by fear, pride, and the unbearable weight of truth. Neither would yield. Neither could afford to. And though the house stood silent, immaculate in the morning calm, the battle had already begun, an invisible war of will and vengeance that would consume them both long before anyone else realized that the empire of Fairmont Crest was already dying.